Hello everyone, this is Mr. Kesnick. This is for the week 4, the first Delta Math assignment. It's on solving linear inequalities with fractions. And just a heads up, I have a different slate that I'm writing with, and I apologize if it's giving me a little bit of trouble. It's much smaller than what I'm used to, so it's being a little jerky. So I apologize. This is going to be a learning curve for me in using this one. So here goes. To solve this one, so this is what it looks like in Delta Math. So I've just rewritten it over here so I have room to work. All right, let me slide down a bit because I know I'll need it. The first thing that you have to do is you have to distribute this 3 inside the parenthesis. So the left side just stays put. 2 plus, now this 3 is going to distribute inside. So that's negative 27x plus, and when you multiply a whole number by a fraction, 3 times a half, think of it, there's a 1 on the bottom, and you just multiply straight across. So that would be 3 halves. Now you've got some like terms on the side, so I'll go ahead and combine those. Negative 1 plus 9x is less than 2 plus 3 halves. I'm going to think of 3 halves as 1 1/2, so I can do this in my head. 2 plus 1 1/2 is 3 1/2 minus the 27x. Plus a negative 27, I'm just going to write as minus 27. Okay? Adding a negative is just subtracting. Okay? Now I need to get everything on the same side. Like I need to get all the variables on the same side and all the numbers on the same side. So I'm going to cut this 9x off. So I have negative 1 is less than 3 1/2 minus 36x. So I've gotten all the variables on the same side. Now I need to get all the numbers on the same side. So I'm going to cut the 3 1/2 off both sides. So I've got minus 4 1/2 is less than, sorry, that's low, negative 36x. Now, before this is held by multiplication, before I can divide out that negative 36, I need to write this as an improper fraction. So you go 4 times 2 is 8, plus 1 is 9. So that's negative 9 over 2 is less than negative 36x. If you were to divide, let me rewrite it over here, minus 9 halves x is less than negative 36. Sorry if I said x there. Negative 9 halves is less than negative 36. If I divide by negative 36, you get what's called a compound fraction, a fraction within a fraction. And that's like chewing with your mouth open at the dinner table. You need to avoid that. So to make it go away, rather than saying dividing, I'm going to multiply by its reciprocal times negative 1 over 36. I could have left the negative on the bottom. Okay. I'm going to reduce this. 9 goes into itself once and 36 4 times. So I have a negative 1 times a negative 1 is positive. 4 times 2 is 8. Now, you multiply it across an inequality with a negative, so I have to turn the inequality around. So that would be your answer. And you'd go back up and you'd write it in using the symbols you can choose up here. Okay? Let's try the next one. Here I'm just distributing a negative inside. So negative 8, come on, negative 8. Whoa, that's a heck of an 8. It's greater than 5 halves. The negative is going to distribute as if you're multiplying a negative inside. So that's minus 6x minus 3. These are like terms. I need to combine them. I'm going to think of this as a 2 1/2, so I can do this math in my head. Okay, 2 1/2 minus 3. So negative 8, whoa, that's a bad 8 again, is greater than 2 1/2 minus 3 is negative 1/2 minus 6x. I need to bring this half to the other side, so I'm going to add a half to both sides. Negative 8 plus a half would be negative 7 1/2 is greater than negative 6x. Okay. The slate's giving me more trouble than I expected. Again, I can't just divide by the negative 6. I need to write this as an improper fraction. 7 times 2 is 14 plus 1 is 15. So that's negative 15 halves is greater than negative 6x. Rather than dividing by the negative 6, I'm going to multiply by its reciprocal. There's a 3 that will reduce here. So I'm going to reduce out that 3. 3 goes into 6 twice, into 15 5 times. Negative 1 times negative 5 is 5. 2 times 2 is 4. You multiply it across that inequality with a negative, so this has to flip, change the direction, x. So there would be your answer. Okay, and this one. 1 is greater than, distribute the negative in, negative x plus 5 halves minus 4x. This time you have x's on the same side. When they're on the same side, you just combine them. You're just adding like terms. If you need to put a 1 there to help you see it, negative 1x minus 4x is minus 5x plus 5 halves. And again, I'm going to think of that as a mixed number. So I'm going to think of this in my head as 2.5. So I can mentally just go, I'm going to subtract 2.5 and subtract 2.5 rather than grabbing a calculator. It's not that I'm requiring that you write them as a mixed fraction. Just this way, I don't need to use a calculator to pull this over and combine it with that whole number. 1 minus 2.5 is minus 1.5. Whoops, 1.5 is greater than negative 5x. So I'm going to write it over here. Minus 1 1/2 is greater than negative 5x. What is that? 5x. Okay, just like the other ones, before I divide, I need to write this as an improper. 1 times 2 is 2, plus 1 is 3, negative 3 halves is greater than negative 5x. And just like the others, I'm going to multiply by its reciprocal. There's nothing that's going to cancel, so I can just multiply straight across. That would be positive 3/10. Again, you multiply it across an inequality with a negative number, so the inequality has to turn x. Okay. This one, you're going to distribute a fraction inside. X is less than or equal to. This would become positive x over 5. If you want to see that separately, negative 1/5 times x. If you think that over 1, you're just going to multiply straight across. Oops, that was a negative. So that's why it became positive, and the 5's on the bottom. This negative 1/5 has to multiply to the 2. So that would be minus negative 1/5, whoops, negative 1/5 times 2. Think of it over 1. You're just multiplying straight across. So that would be 2/5. Come on. 5ths. And this plus 2 is still there. This negative 1/5 only goes for what's in the parenthesis. It doesn't distribute out here to the 2. Okay. So I have x less than or equal to x over 5, negative 2/5 plus 2. Negative 2/5 plus 2. This is going to, it would be 1 3/5. So it'd be positive 1 3/5. If you want to think of this 2 in terms of fifths, that would be, come on, 10/5. You're going to subtract 2/5 from it, so that's going to give you 8/5 or 1 3/5. So I'm trying to make this more complicated than it needs to be. I just wasn't sure if y'all could do that in your head. 2 minus 2/5 is 1 3/5. Okay, so that's how I got that. Now I need to get all the x's on the same side. That's a 1x, a 1/5 x. I need to subtract that from both sides. Come on, Slate, you can do this, or I can get used to it, one of the two. Minus x over 5. If that 1 there helps you, it's 1x minus 1/5 x. So that would be 4/5 x is less than or equal to 1 3/5. Now, before I can get rid of this 4/5 by multiplying by its reciprocal, I need to change the number on the other side to a mixed fraction, or improper fraction. Sorry, it already is mixed. 5 times 1 is 5, plus 3 is 8. So 4/5 x is less than or equal to 8/5. Now we need to multiply by this reciprocal to get rid of it. So that would be 5/4 being multiplied on both sides. So x is less than or equal to, the 5's cancel out, and the 4 reduces. So in this mess, what's left is just a 2 on top. So it's just a 2. I think that got kind of messy. Let me change colors just so it's a little more clear. Times 5/4. The 5 cancels out and leaves a 1 in its place. Come on. If you want it, if this reducing now, 4 goes into itself once, into 8 twice. So when you multiply straight across, you just get 2. You didn't multiply across by any negatives, so the inequality stays the same direction. Okay? All right, distributing a fraction inside. X is greater than or equal to, the -6 just sits there. This -1/4 is going to multiply in. Okay, so I've got -1/4 times -6x. Think of this as over 1. The 4 will reduce. 4 goes into itself twice, into 6 3 times. Okay, the 2 cancels out instead of 4. 2 goes into 4 twice, and 2 goes into 6 3 times. So you're left with -1/2 times 3x over 1. And you just multiply straight across. So that's minus 3x over 2. Now the -1/4 times 5. -1/4 times 5. Nothing's reducing, so I have minus 5/4. These are like terms, I'm going to bring them together. -5/4 is like -1 1/4. I can do that in my head because it's a mixed number with the 6. So I have x greater than or equal to -7 1/4 minus 3x over 2. I need to get the x's on the same side, so I'm going to add the 3/2 x to both sides. This is 1x plus 1.5x. 3/2 x is the same as 1.5x. So to do this in my head, I'm just 1 and 1.5 is 2.5x greater than or equal to -7 1/4. Now I'm going to have to change both of these into improper fractions so I can get rid of this 2.5 here. 4 plus 1 is 5, so that's 5/2 x greater than or equal to 28 plus 1 is 29 minus 29/4. Now I'm going to multiply by this reciprocal. 2/5 times 2/5. The 2 reduces. Now you multiply straight across. So that would be -29/5. So x is greater than or equal to, sorry that greater than symbol is poor, -29/5. Boy, the slate's harder for me to get used to than I expected. Again, I apologize. Okay, last one. 8 is less than 5 plus. This 2/5 is going to multiply in. So I got 2/5 times a -x. That's the same thing as 2/5 times a -1x over 1. You're just multiplying straight across. So that's minus 2/5 x. Okay. Now you've got the 2/5 times the -3/2. So 2/5 times a negative 3/2. The 2 cancels out. So you're just going to multiply straight across. So that's minus 3/5. These are on the same side. 5 minus 3/5. So I can just combine them. Minus 3/5. That's the same thing as 5 minus 1.5. So take the 1 off and you got 4. Another half. That's 3.5. So you have 8 is less than 3.5 minus 2/5 x. I need to move this 3/5 to the other side. So I'm going to, sorry, 3/5. 3.5, 3/2. No, I've said that wrong again. Okay, 3.5. So I'm going to subtract the 3.5 from both sides. Scoot this down. 8 minus 3.5. Just taking the 3 off gives you 5. And another half is 4.5 is less than, what's left over there is negative 2/5 x. I'm going to write this as improper so I can get rid of this negative 5/2, negative 2/5. Man, my tongue's getting tied. Okay, 8 plus 1 is 9. 9/2 is less than negative 2/5 x. And I'm going to multiply by the reciprocal of this coefficient. So that'd be negative 5/2 times negative 5/2. Nothing is canceling. So that's minus 45/4. X is still here, but the inequality has to change direction because you multiplied both sides by a negative number. So then that would be your answer. Okay, that's the last one. Sorry it's so long, but there are lots of examples. Have a great one.